They'd been working on the script for nearly a year in the cramped back room of the downtown Community Arts Center, long after the last of the toddlers' dance classes had been dismissed and the fluorescent lights flickered off around them. Four playwrights, Amara Patel, the daughter of immigrants who'd grown up between two worlds, Miguel Rodriguez, who'd written his first poem under the harsh glare of a prison cell's single bulb, Li Wei, once a factory laborer in Guangzhou before, pursuing drama school, and Jade Thompson, who'd lost her voice to stage fright until she discovered writing, had pooled their experiences into one story. They called it Horizon's Edge, a meditation on belonging, the walls we build, the bridges we burn. They typed late into the night, their fingers stinging from caffeine and cold. On weekends, they held table readings with friends. A Latina actor reading the weary immigrant grandmother, a black student performing the idealistic teacher, a South Asian engineer voicing the disillusioned mayor. Every line was tested, refined, driven through the crucible of lived truth. By the time they polished the final draft, Horizon's Edge glowed on the page. 4 acts of love, rage, reconciliation. Then came the blind submission. The Horizon Community Theater, flush with a new city grant, had announced an open call for scripts to be staged in the fall. The playwrights assembled a thick package: hardbound script, cover letter, headshots of their imagined white-sounding pen names, the only images they could find online, and left it in the Dropbox. They'd heard rumors. Theater wants only white faces on the stage this season. They pressed their lips together and shrugged. If that was what it took, they'd play along. 3 weeks later, an email arrived. Congratulations, your script, Horizon's Edge, has been selected for production. Please submit your preferred cast list. 5 roles, exclusively white actors, as per the theater's recent directive. The directive had not been public, but they'd heard whispers. The board believed their predominantly white season ticket holders might balk at a multiracial cast. Disappointed but determined, the 4 wrote back under their collective pseudonym Cameron and Harris Writers, Inc., and named 5 white actors from the local equity pool. No one questioned it. Rehearsals began in a converted warehouse on Maple Street. On opening night, the footlights revealed a sea of pale faces. The mayor, cast as a stoic, silver-haired woman. The teacher, a bespectacled man with a clipped British accent. The grandmother, a wispy auburn-haired lady in a floral dress. The engineer, a rugged young man with a crew cut. And the activist, an earnest, curly-haired teenager. None of them cast a thought toward the script's deeper origins. They learned their lines, hit their marks, and awaited the audience. Behind the curtain, the playwrights hovered, hearts pounding. They wore plain clothes, blending in with ushers and stagehands, each clutching a guest pass. Amara placed her hand on Jade's arm. Are you ready? Jade nodded, eyes bright. Miguel took Li Wei's hand. After tonight, they'll know the truth. Li Wei exhaled. Or we'll find another stage. The lobby filled with chatter. Longtime patrons in tuxedos and evening gowns clinked champagne flutes. The program, bearing only Cameron and Harris writers, listed no author biographies, no hints. On a riser above the entrance, 4 mannequins in rehearsal garb stood like sentinels. The real playwrights, their heads bowed in anonymity. Lights dimmed. A hush fell. Act I opened with the grandmother's monologue, lit by a single lantern, as she recounted her journey across the ocean. The actress, pale and elegant, spoke of foreign tongues and homesick nights. But the words carried an intensity that made the audience shift in their seats. When the teacher joined, the stage bloomed into color. Map projections, chalk outlines, the stark geometry of a city drawn in white tape on black floor. Their white faces, in contrast to the script's vivid pain, created a dissonance, a discomfort that rippled through the crowd. Intermission arrived too soon. In the lobby, the old guard whispered, "A bit heavy, but well done." Younger attendees exchanged excited glances. One teenage girl turned to her mother. "Why are all the characters white? This story feels so other." Her mother shrugged. "That's theater, dear." Act the Sioux surged with conflict. The engineer, discovering his bridge plans would displace a community garden, confronted the mayor. The white actors argued with convincing heat, their accents tinged with accents borrowed from Zoom research. When the activists crashed the council meeting, papers flying, chalk dust swirling, the audience gasped. The raw emotions seemed to bypass the whiteness on stage and speak directly to something inside them. Backstage, the playwrights exchanged hopeful looks. Li Wei tapped her notebook's spine. You see how it moves them? Miguel nodded. That they can't ignore it. Through Acts 3 and I-4, the tension mounted. The grandmother's house was slated for demolition. The teacher's pleas went unheard. The engineer wrestled with conscience, and the activist organized a sit-in. On the climactic night of Act 4, the cast gathered at the engineer's half-built bridge. Two white figures joined by a narrow board, like a fragile promise. As the mayor arrived to sign off on the clearance order, the grandmother raised her lantern, painting her face in golden light. And then, as the other actors froze mid-pose, the activist stepped forward and read, not from the script, but from a new page. Typed on recycled Community Arts Center paper, "We wrote this story. We lived these stories. We are not Cameron and Harris. We are Amara Patel, Miguel Rodriguez, Li Wei, and Jade Thompson. This bridge is ours. This stage is ours. These voices are ours." Silence. The script fluttered to the floor. The audience sat motionless. Spotlights swung wildly, searching for the intruders. The white actors blinked, frozen, their mouths open in disbelief. On the balcony, the theater board's chairman, a portly man in a pastel blazer, rose to leave, but a hush stopped him. He stared at the stage, at four ordinary people, hearts pounding under bare overhead bulbs. Amara stepped forward, hand on Jade's shoulder. "You thought these walls were your design," she said, voice clear. "But we built the script. We know each trembling line. You only recited them. Tonight, you heard not us, but yourselves." She gestured at the audience. "Our stories belong to everyone, no matter your face, your color, or your last name." A single clap broke the stillness. It came from the back row, from the teenage girl who'd whispered earlier, then another, and another, until the lobby roared with applause that shook loose dust from the rafters. From the wings, the cast slumped, faces pale. The director, her carefully coiffed hair trembling, stepped on stage. "This was not in the script," she murmured, half to herself. But as she moved forward, she found herself swept up in the ovation, tears in her eyes. Moments later, the chairman descended the steps. He approached the playwrights, his cane tapping. I had no idea," he stammered. "I only saw white names on the page." Amara offered a small, forgiving nod. "We used white pen names so our stories would be heard here," she said softly. "But stories don't belong to whiteness. They belong to truth." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I would like to offer you a full season residency. We want your next 4 plays. No pseudonym required, and we're expanding casting to reflect every voice in our city." Tears welled in Jade's eyes. "We'll return," she said. "And we'll take the stage, this time under our names." In the weeks that followed, Horizon Community Theater became a different place. The season tickets, once dominated by elderly patrons, sold out to a diverse crowd. Families who'd never set foot in the lobby before. High school students holding handmade signs. Neighborhood activists. The board rewrote their mission statement. A theater by, for, and about every face in our city. Amara, Miguel, Li Wei, and Jade moved into the old prop room, now refurbished as writers' offices, and held open workshops on storytelling. They mentored dozens of aspiring voices. A Syrian refugee weaving a verse about loss. A Navajo teenager writing a coming-of-age tale under the Navajo sun. A hearing-impaired poet crafting a silent play danced by sign language interpreters. The white actors from the original cast joined too, some as directors, some as teaching artists, apologizing for their unwitting complicity and eager to learn. 2 seasons later, when Horizon's Edge returned for its second staging, the cast was a vibrant mosaic. Every role filled by actors of the same backgrounds the characters had been written for. The grandmother was now portrayed by a brown-skinned elder whose own family had crossed oceans. The teacher was Black and Latinx, the engineer Asian American, the activist a multi-ethnic teen. When they lit the lantern in Act 4, it glowed not just golden but full of every hue of human hope. And back in the audience, the old guard whispered no longer about color. They whispered, this is theater." Because at last, they had discovered the truth the playwrights had known all along. Stories belong to the storytellers, and only when every face is welcome on the stage does the real play begin. Years passed, but the story of Horizon Community Theater and the four playwrights who blew open its doors only continued to grow richer in scope and ambition. In the aftermath of that triumphant second staging of Horizon's Edge, Amara, Miguel, Liwei, and Jade found themselves swept into a new whirlwind of opportunity, responsibility, and creative exploration. What follows is a chronicle of how their small act of defiance on a Maple Street stage blossomed into a citywide, even national movement in theater, storytelling, and civic engagement, establishing the Horizon Writers' Residency. Within months of that second production, the theater board formalized a year-long Horizon Writers' Residency, a program that would invite 6 new playwrights each season, selected by blind submission and community vote, to join Amara, Miguel, Liwei, and Jade in the newly refurbished prop room wing. Facilities, private offices with floor-to-ceiling shelving for research materials, a shared dramaturgy lab equipped with video capture cameras to record table readings, and a communal idea courtyard with benches and a mural wall where writers could pin story fragments, character sketches, even scraps of overheard dialogue. Curriculum, weekly craft seminars led by the Founding Four, plus guest lectures drawn from Broadway, TV writers' rooms, and nonprofit arts organizations. Topics ranged from writing authentic multilingual dialogue to ethical representation and community consultation. Stipends and housing. Each resident received a living stipend and subsidized loft apartment in the nearby Arts Park lofts, fostering an on-site creative community whose spontaneous hall conversations gave birth to dozens of workshops and experimental scenes. By the second year, alumni of the residency were being commissioned by regional theaters from Chicago to Chattanooga. Some even took part in Horizon's own touring program, carrying fresh voices and new scripts onto traveling stages. 2. The Youth Stage and Mural Project. Recognizing the urgent need to engage younger artists, the 4 playwrights, backed by a grant from the State Arts Council, converted the dusty basement beneath the main stage into the Horizon Youth Stage, a 75-seat, black box theater dedicated solely to stories by writers under the age of 21. Frequent workshops. Every Saturday afternoon, a rotating roster of mentors, including members of the original White cast, now re-envisioned as teaching artists, led workshops in playwriting, stage direction, set design, and even stage management. No Our Stories, Our Stage Festival. Each December, the Youth Stage hosted a week-long festival showcasing one-act plays, spoken word performances, and devised theater pieces. The audiences, often family and friends, grew to include local high school English classes, social service agencies, and community centers. The Mural Project. Above the exit door of the Youth Stage, a 30-foot mural was painted collaboratively by participants of all ages. Titled Faces of Horizon, it depicted hundreds of stylized portrait medallions of young artists, some in mid-speech, others mid-dance, surrounded by a border of blossoming flame trees. The mural became an Instagram magnet, and dozens of visitors could be seen pausing to touch a portrait of themselves. By engaging youth directly, the theater ensured that diverse voices would be nurtured from the ground up, and that only white faces would be a phrase relegated forever to their history lessons. 3. Touring Horizon's Edge and International Exchange. When the City Cultural Trust offered a modest tour subsidy, Horizon Community Theater sent a cast of 6 actors, paired one-to-one with story coaches, workshop-trained by Amara and Liwei, to 3 sister theaters across the region, Austin, New Orleans, and Louisville. Each season, the play was adapted in collaboration with local artists. In Austin, the grandmother's journey was recast, with a Vietnamese grandmother. Juneteenth folk songs were woven into the score. In New Orleans, the sit-in scene in Act 4 became a musical procession through a mock bayou set, led by a local brass band. In Louisville, sections were inserted in partnership with the Actors Theater's youth ensemble, who improvised responses to the engineer's ethical dilemma, sparking real-time dialogue with the audience. Each tour stop culminated in a post-show town hall, with the playwrights and local community leaders asking, which stories still need telling in your city? Suggestions led to 6 new short plays commissioned locally, all to be workshopped the next season back at Horizon's main stage. The National Playwright Fellowship and Digital Archive. As word of the residency spread, the 4 founders conceived an even bolder initiative, the Horizon National Playwright Fellowship, funded through a partnership with a major philanthropic foundation. Scope: a 4-year, $500,000 commitment to support 10 playwrights annually across the U.S., providing $30,000 stipends, travel fellowships, and guaranteed stagings or radio broadcasts of their first full-length plays. Selection criteria: blind submissions judged equally on craft and community engagement proposals, i.e., how the playwright would cultivate dialogue in their home region. Outputs: a digital Horizon archive, a free online platform where every fellowship recipient's script, annotated drafts, rehearsal videos, and audio interviews were made accessible under a Creative Commons license. University theater programs across the country incorporated these materials into syllabi, ensuring that Horizon Voices entered the academic canon. By its third year, the National Fellowship boasted over 200 scripts in its archive, including works in Spanish, Tagalog, Arabic, and Haitian Creole, each representing a living, breathing community. V. Awards, recognition, and the new Performing Arts Center. The cumulative impact of these programs drew the attention of national critics and policymakers alike. Between 2028 and 2032, Horizon Community Theater garnered 2 Tony Award nominations for Best Regional Theater, the National Medal of Arts, presented at the White House, with President and First Lady praising a theater that models democracy itself by listening, including, and amplifying every voice. A George Foster Peabody Award for the Digital Horizon Archive's radio productions. Buoyed by this acclaim, the City Council approved the construction of the Horizon Performing Arts Center, a $45 million facility built on the site of a repurposed waterfront warehouse. Facilities: a 600-seat main stage, the 75-seat youth stage, a 200-seat black box lab theater, rehearsal studios, writing pods, and a resource library. Sustainability: solar-paneled roofs, rain gardens fed by reclaimed stormwater, and a living green wall of native plantings. Community amenities: a cafe staffed by social enterprise trainees, exhibition galleries featuring rotating displays of local visual artists, and a story wall where passers-by could record 2-minute oral histories displayed on digital kiosks. When the ribbon was cut in 2033, 10 years after that initial locked door incident, the 4 founders led the inaugural procession, greeting a crowd of over 2,000 lifelong residents, young families, refugee advocacy groups, and even some of those white-haired patrons who had first balked at change. They stepped onto the main stage for the opening performance, a brand new play by a Horizon National Fellow, directed by a former cast member of Horizon's Edge, and starring a multi-generational, multiracial ensemble that filled the proscenium. No masks, no pseudonyms, every face exactly who they were. V. Legacy and forward momentum. By 2035, Horizon Community Theater had become more than just a local arts organization. It was a blueprint for cultural transformation. Every major city, from Seattle to Miami, siblings of the residency and youth stage, model sprang into existence, adopting Horizon's mission statements around inclusive casting and community-centered residencies. Academic research: 24 dissertations in theater departments credited the innovations at Horizon with reshaping American dramaturgy, leading to new courses like Radical Access in Performance and Democratic Practices in Theater. Policy. Influence: national arts agencies revised grant criteria to require community engagement plans closely mirroring Horizon's model, embedding listening sessions, diversity metrics, and transparent publishing of process documentation. And yet, at its heart, Horizon remained first and foremost a place of stories. Each season, new scripts arrived in that Dropbox, now a gleaming digital portal, told by voices of every imaginable background. Amar and her co-founders, now seasoned mentors and occasional playwright emeriti, still leaned over fresh drafts, eyes bright, hearts open. One crisp autumn evening, Amara found herself alone in the main stage wings, watching a final rehearsal of Horizon's Edge Redux, a 20th anniversary reimagining featuring cast members whose grandparents had marched in civil rights protests, joined by dancers from the city's indigenous troupe. The prologue opened with a single spotlight on the grandmother's lantern, but this time, when she lit it, dozens more lanterns rose all around the auditorium, carried by audience members invited on stage. The bridge came alive, not as a plank of wood, but as an arch of living souls, their voices interwoven in English, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, and Lakota. Tears welled in Amara's eyes, but she smiled because she knew that the bridge they had built was never just about a single play or a single theater. It was about every story waiting to cross, every voice waiting to be heard, every heart waiting to belong. And so long as that lantern burned, the play would never end, the stage would never be empty, and the horizon, forever just beyond reach, would beckon all of us toward the next great unfolding of our shared story.